Hello, and welcome to another installment of Benson Live. We appreciate your time and interest to join us today as we spotlight the promising aspects of California whiskey and this thrilling release of Redwood Empire Whiskey's first bonded whiskeys. My name is Marie Christina Batiche of the Benson Marketing Group, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. We will be joined shortly by our panel, who will be discussing how Redwood Empire Whiskey is truly taking California whiskey to new heights. Before we get started, please know that the presentation is being recorded and we'll be able to share that with you after the fact. We also hope that the event today will not only spark joy, but pique your curiosity for California whiskey. So feel free to ask questions using the chat function. We'll work those into our conversation as applicable with our guests, who will soon be introducing themselves. And you're welcome to, of course, taste along with them as we do that, or at your own leisure. So let's get into it. As I think it was Mark Twain who once said, "Too much of anything is bad, but too much good whiskey is barely enough." Well, I think I could agree with Mr. Twain on that. So without further ado, let's head on over to California and hear directly from the team of Redwood Empire Whiskey. Let's first welcome Aaron Webb, the CEO of Redwood Empire Whiskey's parent company, Purple Brands, a wine and spirits company. Hello, Aaron. Tell our group about yourself.
Hello, and welcome everybody. I'm Aaron Webb. I've been with Purple Wines and Spirits for about 6 years. I've been in this industry on the wine and spirits side both for over 20 years, and spending well over a decade at Brown-Forman working on wine, whiskey, and tequila while I was there. Importantly, I'm not from California originally. I'm from Kentucky and grew up and was born and raised in Kentucky, where we drink whiskey pretty much as we drink water. So I know a little bit about whiskeys. Jeff? Cool.
That's great. Let's hear from our makers. First up, Jeff Duckhorn, Master Distiller of Redwood Empire Whiskey. Jeff, go ahead. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jeff Duckhorn. I've been with Purple for a little over a decade now. Started out in accounting, believe it or not. I'm known locally as the accountant gone rogue, and now for the last 6.5 years, I've got to have the great privilege of running the distillery and learning a ton about whiskey and drinking a lot of whiskey and really enjoying pretty much everything I do.
That's awesome. Sounds good. And last but not least, we have Lauren Patz, head distiller of Redwood Empire Whiskey. Lauren, go ahead. Tell the group a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Lauren Patz and I'm the head distiller for Redwood Empire Whiskey. I'm also the newest addition, so I've been with the team since the beginning of this year, January 2021. Previously, I was the head distiller for Spirit Works Distillery. I was there for 7.5 years, so I do have some experience under my belt, but it's been really fun to get to know the team here and to be embedded in our philosophy and focus moving forward with Redwood Empire. So, yeah.
Right on. Glad to have you all here with us today. Thank you again. So let's go ahead and dive in. Aaron, why don't you tell us a bit about the background of Redwood Empire Whiskey and the distillery's origins, perhaps its recent trajectory, and so forth.
Sure. Great. Well, this project started with the owner of Purple, Derek Benham, well over a decade ago. He began working on the brands, the concepts, the permitting and everything else, breaking ground on the distillery a few years later. We started distilling whiskey and gin in 2015. And right around the time I joined, which was late 2015. And so when I arrived here, one of the first mandates I received was to figure out what to do with our distillery and what to do with the strategy overall. And I worked with Jeff very closely, and the mandate for us immediately was to produce a lot more whiskey, because if we wanted to become a larger, high quality whiskey producer, we needed to have a lot of whiskey in barrel aging, and we began that right away. We did a nationwide launch only a couple years ago with 3 primary products: a rye, a bourbon, and a blend of straight whiskeys, and it's been met with really good success. We We this year in 2021 will ship over 20,000 9-liter cases, and are doing really, really well. We expect to nearly double that again in 2022. So we're off to a great start. We've also made sure over time that we've been able to do special things like barrel programs. Those initially started from purchased whiskey, and then also what we're releasing now, the bottled in bond product, which is a 5-year-old product produced grain to glass here, which we're launching now.
Yeah, sounds good. And that's right. I believe it's the core whiskeys was also recently exported out to the UK. So
Yes.
Let the Brits rejoice, right?
Doing really well there.
That's right. Okay, let's shift over to Jeff. Why don't you tell us what makes Redwood Empire Whiskey uniquely California, shall we say? You know, what makes it unique, period, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we talk about a lot about that in-house. I mean, we, as Aaron mentioned, we started distilling in 2015, and there were already some great whiskeys being made in California. We're by no means the first. There's obviously a lot of great whiskey being made throughout the U.S. So we really, dove into that. I mean, for us, I think it's a lot about, thoughtful exploration, thinking about tasting through what's out there in the marketplace, paying respect and homage to all the great other whiskey appellations, so to speak, in the world, and in the U.S. And then, taking a little bit of a side turn and drawing on what we have locally here and what we do well here. I mean, in Sonoma County, we have, amazing cooperages. We have the coast close by. We've got beautiful climate. We have all these great things we can draw on. We have a local malt house just an hour down the road from us. So we have beautiful local malt barley available to us. We have Sacramento Valley where we get a lot of our grains from. And so we have a lot of things we can draw on locally. And so it's kind of this combination of drawing from what's been done so well for the last 100 years plus, and then putting our local stamp on it with some knowledge and expertise that we have available locally.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure it should give people some element of confidence to go ahead and venture out buying whiskey outside of Kentucky and Tennessee, the more established whiskey regions. So great, glad to hear it. Lauren, let's chat with you a bit. What elements give Redwood Empire Whiskey the ability for that equal standing, if you will, against some of the other established whiskey producers? If you could maybe describe a bit for our audience today, the aspects of the whiskey that essentially place Redwood Empire Whiskey at the table.
Absolutely. Well, I love this question because I've been a judge with the American Distilling Institute for the past 5 years, and this year I was the lead judge on the bourbon table. So this is absolutely a question that I've been asked, and I feel really passionate about and feel like I have something to offer in the conversation. When I'm tasting whiskeys, and bourbon in particular, I'm looking for several kind of indicating key quality components, and those are what I'm making my assessment on, my judging on. And so for the first one, it has a lot to do with texture. So for me, how it sits on the palate, the softness, the longevity of the finish, that really has to play a large role in the overall quality of the product itself. Secondly, I'm looking for complexity. I really am hoping that a whiskey has a little bit more to offer than maybe just 1 or 2 flavor notes, and really that there's some depth there, that it's continuously evolving as I'm sipping on it, and really kind of awakening not only my curiosity, but also my enjoyment of that spirit itself. And then the third, I think, is really important, maybe less so for the judging component of it, but really to build brand loyalty and trust. And that has to do with consistently delicious and high quality products coming out of your distillery. And I think for all 3 of those, Redwood Empire is doing an excellent job, and I hope to continue to help make that happen with our team here.
Wow, incredible resource you are then. Thank you very much for that. So we are really here today because of Redwood Empire Whiskey's milestone moment, shall we call it, the first bottled in bond release. Congratulations, of course, to all of you and the rest of the team behind the scenes. Jeff, let's start with you. Maybe if you could take us back to the distilling season, spring of 2016. Gosh, we were all 5 years younger back then. So what decisions did what decisions did you make back then, and maybe how did those decisions impact the style, or anything you learned along the way?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, great question. So 2016, we were a year into this program, so I'm not going to say that we knew everything. Obviously, still have a lot to learn, but we had a pretty good idea what we were doing, had our still pretty well figured out. We have this very unique continuous column that did take us a while to get dialed in, but we had a pretty good idea of what our house style was and what we could achieve with this still. And so we were, had our mash bills pretty well figured out. Knew we were going to do a lot of bourbon. Aaron was very instrumental in helping us set these very lofty goals that we've been striving for year after year. And so we were just kind of honing in that style. And I personally am a big fan of complexity, but also balance and really a sense of a delicacy, and especially with bourbon. I mean, we tasted through a ton of bourbons early on, trying to understand the marketplace and with the universe, what's out there. And there is an incredible amount of diversity in bourbon and whiskey in general. And it's something that's really hard to get right and very easy to get wrong. And so for us, it was all about, really straddling that line of coming up with something that was unique to us. So yeah, we're going to play around with a little bit different grain, maybe some more malt, some more wheat, some different components, but also being very thoughtful about it and having something that we know is going to be a bit restrained and have some delicacy to it. And so that was a big part of what we were going for. But no two mash bills being identical for us, and really trying to create some complexity through different mash bills. And so once a quarter, we really kind of flip things around, do a high rye bourbon, do a wheated bourbon. We do some rye with a high malt content. So really trying to play with the grains and really coax out some different flavors that will really help us later on when we're blending.
That's great. Oh, wow. Okay. So Lauren, maybe if you can chime in here then with these releases, how they uniquely reflect the Redwood Empire Whiskey style.
Absolutely. It was one of the coolest things. The first project that I got to work on when I joined the team was the blend for these bottled and bond products. So what better way to get to know a distillery than to taste through a couple hundred barrels that they had going in the back and get a really strong sense of the philosophy and the house palate and all of that. And it was a really wonderful way to kind of come on board and feel like I had a sense of ownership about what we do here as well. And I think that Jeff and I stylistically are really aligned. We go a little bit more for this sense of finesse and depth. We're really hoping to achieve, as Jeff mentioned, a true balance of those blends that we're putting together. So both the Rocket Top Rye and the Grizzly Beast Bourbon are a blend of 26 barrels, and we tasted every single barrel. And during that process, we were looking for the individual notes that each barrel expressed and how they would play in that larger role as part of a blend. So we absolutely incorporated that idea of trying to create a symphony rather than a solo.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I like that. Hey, do you guys have your? Oh, good. You do have your.
We're all professionals here.
I've got one here for myself too.
Yeah, I wish you were all here with us. I know several of you have been out here to the distillery, and we're very excited to get past this temporary roadblock we're on right now and have people come back out and visit us. And it really is a joy for Lauren and myself to bring people out to the distillery and show off what we're doing, because we are very proud of it. I mean, we've been doing this for over 6 years now, and we think we have something special in what we can provide to the world. So we love to show that off. So please come join us.
So want to get into, let's start with the bourbon maybe. If you want to describe your goal, and hopefully some of the guests are tasting along, but go ahead and walk us through.
Yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, I mean, bourbon is, for me, it was probably the largest challenge. I personally am a huge rye fan. I love rye. I love spicy stuff. Getting a little bit older, my palate, gears toward those things with a little more pop to them. So bourbon is really so delicate. And so I was really wanting to have something, delicate, restrained. I love fruit. And so we ferment at a little higher temperature. Typically we're around 90, and really trying to coax out some of these nice tropical fruits out of the blend. And then, like I said, working with the minor grains, the primarily rye, but also some wheat, and of course barley, some different types of barley to just kind of create this complexity of flavors, the symphony, as Lauren and I like to talk about, of just all these different notes on your palate. And so that's where I think the bourbon delivers. It's got some nice fruit. It does have some spice. This is a 4-grain bourbon, so it's got, of course, predominantly bourbon. It's got a nice touch of rye in it, and then it also has some wheat in addition to the malt barley. So really nice complexity from all those things working together. And for 100 proof, we think it drinks pretty damn smooth. We've been enjoying it for the last half hour here. So yeah, really fun to make, and really look forward to making more and more of it.
Even more fun to drink.
Yes, of course.
Lauren, anything you want to add on that for the bourbon specifically?
The bourbon specifically, I think it's got all of what you're looking for with a bourbon in terms of that creaminess and the softness on the palate, some of that sweeter components that you would probably expect from a bourbon. But as Jeff said, being that 4-grain, you do get a little bit more kind of ability to offset some of that with the other grain components. I really am a huge fan of wheat. I love working with wheat. I love working with all wheat derivatives, spelt, all that good stuff. So I lobbied pretty hard for us to include some of the higher wheat content barrels that were in the back. And I think that it really has a really lovely note to this bourbon, a little bit of stone fruit, a little bit of floral, and again, just kind of softening out any edges that might be there.
All right. Okay, how about we move on to the rye? Unless, Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to add, particularly on bourbon?
I'd just like to say how excited we were after 3 or 4 years of laying down thousands and thousands of cases of whiskey. Once we were trying these, as they got closer to maturation, that they turned out really, really nice. And you make this kind of investment, put in this kind of work. We're hoping, our goal is to rub shoulders with traditional players out there and even stand apart from a lot of the newcomers. And we've been very, very patient with that. So waiting until this product was 5 years old was critical for us as well, because just that simple additional age of a year it made a difference, and I think helped deliver a great product. So it's very exciting.
Must be nice to hear. It's a nice product. Good job, guys.
I hope everybody's tried it.
All right. So let's move into the rye. How about that? Huh?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sure. So as Aaron was saying, it definitely makes our job so much easier as distillers if we can wait that additional time. And the bourbon, I think, of the two, definitely has benefited the most from being that 5 years. We're sitting on over 4,000 barrels of whiskey that we've distilled here in house now, and it's just so awesome to be able to watch those mature over time. So we're drinking the rye now. I'm going to finish my bourbon.
Yeah, waste not, want not.
So the rye, as we talked about, I do love rye. I love a big spicy rye. A lot of times that's my go-to at home is a nice cocktail with some rye, an old-fashioned, maybe a little Amaro or something. So I was very excited to make rye, and we made rye starting day one in 2015 and made quite a bit of it early on. And so I was able to really kind of dive into that. And I love the counterpoint that you can achieve with rye, where people expect it to be that big, huge spice bomb. And this, I think, does deliver on that. But then we restrain that a little bit with some malts, and there is no corn harmed in the making of our rye. Don't worry, this is a very high rye, right around 90% rye. But the additional 10% is malt barley, and then also a little bit of wheat. And so we're back with that wheat again, adding just that little bit of velvety texture, and then the rye adding some different baking spices, some chocolate, to kind of just give it some more legs and complexity. And I think it's really fun. It's fun for me. We enjoyed it a lot. Lauren and I had a lot of fun tasting through all these barrels and identifying the ones that were going to just bring an extra little note to the party. And the wheat was, again, fun. Lauren does love her wheat. Who doesn't love wheat? I mean, it's so good. But we had some fun barrels too that also had a pretty healthy dose of malt barley, and that was cool as well. So it was just really fun to put together. And I just, every day is such a joy to go out and taste these things and just watch them evolve through time. You're a little nervous at 2 years, as Aaron explained, like, where are these going to go? I mean, you just don't know. But to get to the other side of that and really see these things come to fruition is very exciting for all of us.
Yeah, all right, good deal. We have some comments from our audience back on the bourbon, such as big fruity notes on that bourbon. And then another one of our guests is commenting that the rye is very different. It's definitely not a spice bomb. So all good there. And Lauren, did you have anything else you want to add maybe on the rye?
For the rye, absolutely. I, like Jeff, am a huge fan of rye. I think that, industry-wide, there's a lot more diversity of the rye expressions than tends to be for bourbon. And so it's always fun when you taste a distillery's rye whiskey because it does have a very unique flavor, typically, to what maybe other distilleries are offering at the same time. And I too am really proud of what we're able to put out because it does temper some of the aspects of rye that might be a little bit off-putting to some people. Sometimes rye can be so aggressive, almost astringent on the palate, sucking some of that moisture off of your tongue and out of your mouth. And I feel like this stays juicy, it stays soft, but you still get a lot of those classic, savory notes, a lot of kind of earthiness, and even that little bit of bitterness that really help give it its unique flavor as a rye, but not so much that it can hurt in your mouth sometimes.
It's a very polarizing spirit, and so I think ours, again, back to that level of balance and restraint. It's a touch dialed back, so it's a little bit more accessible, and I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Good deal. I mean, these two bottled and bond whiskeys are obviously just rolling out to America now. So any comments maybe from you, Aaron, on certain particular markets, or how do you contextualize that?
We have allocated the launch of this already, and it's all shipping out to distributors currently and getting into accounts, generally targeting accounts that already have the other products as well. So
the 3 core SKUs you're referring to, right?
3 core SKUs, the Pipe Dream, Bourbon, the Emerald Giant Rye,
and the Lost Monarch.
Blended straight whiskey. So it makes it a lot easier to do that way, and folks are very, very excited about it. So I do agree also on the rye and was excited that even after just a couple of years on the rye, it was really tasting nice, and then the complexity just really built from there on top of it. So being able to stand behind these things with distributors and with retailers is just spectacular, and it's so fun to be a part of the brand that consumers really get so excited about. So
absolutely,
we're very excited.
So we have a question here from the audience about Sonoma County distillers really having a moment right now. If there are any goals for a tasting room where visitors can come at some point, something open to the public, obviously down the road. Is there any comments you have there?
Yes. Yeah, we're very excited to eventually have a tasting room. That just didn't work out in our current setup when we originally built the distillery out. We're a little bit off the beaten track. We're in more of a production industrial environment, but as this brand has really started to take off and almost unexpectedly accelerated. I mean, it's great. We all were hoping it was going to do well, but it's exceeded our expectations for the first 2 years. So we are definitely planning for phase 2 of this operation, and very excited to continue to grow the brand and be able to support the brand through organic production.
Yep, it's time for us to expand. We do purchase some whiskey from other producers in Kentucky and other areas, and we'd like to increase the percentage, if not completely produce 100% of our own product over time. So we're at capacity here, and are trying to determine where the next location for our expansion will be.
Thank you again for joining us today. Be sure to follow Redwood Empire Whiskey on Facebook and Instagram, and let us all drink among giants. Cheers.